I'm breathing in and breathing out, slowly turning myself into a feather. Yes, I'm at peace. I'm calm. I'm oming and sniffing and whooing. 'Cause today's gonna be a calm session about meditation. And I'm gonna get started recording the podcast about meditation. So, hang tight. This is another episode of Finding Your Identity. Full of fun. That's right. But it's going to be about meditation and not breathing in and out like I just did, because that's just craziness. Welcome back to Finding Your Identity. This is episode 15. I'm Derek McKinney, your host that's been tethering you to these episodes and tagging you and dragging you along for this spectacular journey, which is finding yourself, finding your identity, finding out information that's just interesting. I think that's probably more like what it is. I hope it's just interesting information that you're finding as we go on this journey. But I'm talking in a certain way. One might talk in this way if they were trying to, say, meditate or calm themselves, bring their minds to a state of peace, bring their bodies to Zen. So, what is this episode going to be about today? It's going to be about meditation. So I'm going to have to dial back my louder outbursts, my crazy sugar-filled rants. I need to be calm. I need you to listen to this episode in the calmest atmosphere possible so that you can feel calm during this episode. Yes, this will get super annoying continuing in this voice. So I'm not going to. In all seriousness, this episode is going to be about meditation, and I will try to keep calm and zen on, but I'm not going to talk like I was just talking. But I wanted to continue with the working on yourself theme, and meditation, I think, is one of those areas that is more about working on yourself from the inside out, I'd say. And I say that because a lot of times, if you think of public speaking, which was one of the episodes, or reading, well, reading is kind of an inside out type of thing too, but public speaking is outside your body, outwardly working on yourself to present yourself in an outward manner. And this one, I guess in the same vein as reading, is working on your internals and your internal mind, your brain, your body, getting yourself to learn how to relax. And I think it's important because it's actually a way to cope with anxiety. And there's a reference that I have from this book that I read that was called The 10 Best Anxiety Techniques, or something to that effect. I can't remember the exact title, but it was about anxiety, and it was about the top 10 techniques. That's a tongue twister. Those top 10 techniques, my gosh, were several things that you could do to help reduce anxiety. Some of them being breathing exercises, some of them just figuring out how to change your state of mind, or how to not get so worked up about certain things. And I think identifying those things that you might be stressing out about, and meditation I think, is at the center of finding your center, as I just threw in a little pun, but I did it calmly, so it should not cause anxiety or stress. But it's really just to figure out a way to balance your body and balance your mind and bring you to a state of happiness. Ultimately, I think that's what we're working towards as humans, is feeling happy, finding happiness. And this is one of those situations where anxiety will throw that off of balance, and that's really going to have a major effect on your happiness in your life. And it becomes a focal point. If you're anxious, then you're focusing on something that's really, drawing your attention away from the happiness, but it's something that's going to continually, perpetually build inside of you and keep you from not feeling anxious. It's just like a vicious cycle, because you get anxious about something and then you start to feel anxious about being anxious, and the cycle just kind of keeps repeating. And I think meditation in general, if you think about it, and it's relaxing your body, it's becoming calm and getting into a calm state of mind. It's one of those things that, it's kind of a distraction for your brain, but it's also refocusing your mind and your body on something that's not that stressor. Anxiety can be stressful. Having anxiety is stressful. And I think if you think about meditation as this activity that's really meant to get you to kind of stop and think and be more thoughtful about your actions, about your breathing, about your posture, your environment. These are all several things that you're going to have to focus on and address in order to successfully meditate. So, that being said, meditation is this great activity that you can do that will help you get rid of the anxiety that you might have. But, more importantly, I think it also has health benefits, because stress has been known to have negative health benefits or negative effects on your body. And it's something that you can't deal with constantly over and over every single day without suffering repercussions, because it's just one of those things that if you don't get it under control, then it's going to kind of spiral and keep spiraling until something happens. Something's bound to break, pressure bust pipes. So that's why this is a good activity. And there's a lot of material out there that will explain what meditation is or how to get started with meditation. But I thought it was interesting when I came across this article. There's this a lifeofproductivity.com that has this meditation guide. And what I found was interesting was the statement that 10 minutes of meditation a day will have a way, way better effect on your body than one day with 70 minutes of meditation. So it's more about getting through your day not getting through your day, but starting your day in order to get through your day, but starting your day with meditation. And it's only got to be 10 minutes. Now, if you think about it, compare this to exercise, where you need to get your heart rate up. You need at least 20 to 30 minutes. It's recommended that you have 30 minutes of vigorous activity a day, or something to that effect. I forget what the numbers are suggested, but I think the American Heart Association says you should have something to the effect of 20 minutes at least of vigorous activity at least 3 or 4 times a week. Well, I'm kind of saying that off the top of my head. I'm not entirely sure if that's accurate, but I think that sounds about right. So I'm going to stick with it. Excuse me. But with meditation, it's 10 minutes, and you could really benefit from it, and it can have a great impact. and it could lead into a routine that you're doing for exercise. It could be that you end this or end your exercise routine with meditation, or it could be that you start it with meditation. That this is how you kind of balance your body and get it in a proper form to exercise. I think that's kind of up to you, however you decide to work this out. I'm not talking about an exercise routine at this point. I'm more or less just saying it could be an accent to it, or it can accompany it in some fashion. But that being said, it's often good to just start small. It's something that you don't want to try to rush into. I think it's with anything. You don't want to just jump into something and then almost scare yourself out of continuing it ever again because you just did way too much too fast. So you can kind of ease into this. And again, it's recommended that you do about 10 minutes, but you could do more. I think you want to do a minimum of 10 minutes, but you could probably do 30 minutes or I don't know, an hour if you really wanted to. But I think, the main point is that you're going to dedicate time to do this. And there are some apps out there. There are definitely plenty of apps in the App Store for a lot of things for working on yourself, but there are meditation apps out there that will act as reminders. So you can actually set it up so you'll get push notifications as reminders that you should meditate. You can track your meditation routine. You can, track how many times you've done it. Maybe you do it more than once a day. If you do it in the morning and you do it in the evening, it could be something like that. So you can leverage these apps to do that. There's also apps that, in addition to being a tracker for your activity, will actually allow you to record maybe notes in it, or will present you with information about how to do it. It might actually be a meditation routine that says, it may be vocally talking to you. The app might actually have an audio aspect of it, and it might say to you calming phrases, or say, okay, start by clearing your mind, closing your eyes, thinking of waterfalls, or maybe it's going to be playing music, calm music of a babbling brook in the background, But check out the apps. I mean, you just search meditation apps in the App Store, and I'm sure you'll find plenty. Now, I think one of the key aspects is the environment. So I think you do need to figure out where you can do this. I mean, I've seen people meditating in the middle of a park, which I think is impressive, considering a lot of parks are in city type areas that are noisy and there's cars driving around or people walking, or people riding bicycles, or dogs barking, people playing with their dogs, children. I mean, there's a lot of noise going on. So how in the world could you do that? But I think that's kind of the point, because if you could find a way to meditate, center yourself in the middle of a noisy environment, then I think you've actually gotten to the point where you're starting to master that craft of meditation. But there's, obviously it's hard. I mean, I don't think you're going to try to do this while you're sitting on a public bus, but maybe. I mean, one of the things that was interesting about that book that I read about the anxiety techniques was it didn't matter where you were. It took you through steps for breathing. And the biggest part, I think, of meditation is controlling your breathing. So being able to breathe through a situation, because if you started to feel anxious and you start the breathing routine, and the key to that is really you need to feel the breathing. So they say you should do diaphragmatic, I think is what the word is. But you got to breathe from your diaphragm, and you can feel that. So you can actually feel a change in your body when you start breathing through the diaphragm. And it's really like breathing so deep that you can feel your diaphragm having to push out the air from the center of your body. And also when you're inhaling, you're feeling the same, but, opposite effect, pushing down on the diaphragm. And that diaphragmatic breathing is part of the exercise of breathing. So I think feeling that, it's focusing on that breathing, because you're actually focusing on the organ inside your body that's moving up and down. And so you're doing that to think through what you're doing, basically to divert your anxious thoughts onto something else. And so that being the case, I think, that's part of meditation, I think, is also trying to feel your body relax. Often you close your eyes so that you're not distracted, but you don't have to, but you'll close your eyes so you're not distracted by the world around you. If you're in the middle of a park, I think that's important because there's probably a lot going on. But again, don't start off in the middle of a park, because I don't think it'll be super successful and it might feel a little weird. But I'd say in your house, in a quiet place in your house, maybe it's your bedroom. Sometimes people have mats, like yoga mats that they'll sit on. Maybe you just sit on a blanket, whatever that is. But, setting yourself up to sit down and meditate, I think, is a critical part of this, because it allows you to get into that mind state, essentially, where you're going to center yourself, in a sense, to get yourself prepared to meditate. And of course I went and messed with the microphone for some reason. Why did I do that? All right. Just because it's allowing you to focus on what you want to do. And when I say that, I mean, you want to meditate. So that's what you're sitting down to focus on right now. You're sitting on the mat, you're getting comfortable. The mat is a comfortable place. Now you don't have to think about being uncomfortable. And you're also putting yourself in the frame of mind that I'm going to start meditating. So you're going to get that aura about you, I guess. You're going to get that Zen state going. You're trying to trigger your body to calm down, basically, is what I'm saying. So I think that it's important you pick a comfortable place. So now you've got a good environment, and it's time to think through, what do I want to try to think about? But the funny thing is you're not supposed to think about anything. You're supposed to clear your mind. So you're supposed to try to focus your attention on your breathing. So it's not something that you can easily do, I don't think. I mean, I think of when I've meditated in the past, how it is tricky, because you have to clear your mind, but you start to think about the fact that you're trying to clear your mind, and that becomes your stress factor, in a sense, because you're thinking, how do I clear my mind? What am I supposed to think about? And you're thinking about not thinking about stuff, and that's kind of, I think, the trick to this. But I think what's interesting is, if you actually think about it, a lot of times trying to think about it actually helps, and it can have a positive effect, because you're no longer thinking about other things in life. You're not thinking about having to get your car looked at, or having to finish an assignment for work or whatever. You're thinking about this meditation activity, and you may be stressing about it because it's like your first time or first few times where you're like, man, I can never turn my brain off. But you're not thinking about the other things. You're thinking about this meditation activity. And I think it's going to take some time to to learn to focus your mind and think about nothing. But I've heard or read that you should try to think of something that's, I think this is a cliche sounding thing, but find your happy place. But I think it makes sense, because if you can try to focus on something, think about something that makes you feel happy, so think about, okay, the meadow that's got the flowers, and it's very peaceful, and there's nothing around, and it's, the green grass. And I mean, maybe you're not necessarily running through the meadow. I mean, I often think of that episode, not the episode, the movie Shrek. I think it was the second one, where it's like the opening scene, and it's that happy music playing, and you see Shrek running through a meadow, and you see Fiona running through the meadow, and they're running towards each other, and it looks so blissful and happy. And then they finally join together and join hands, and you can see that they're being chased by the townspeople, and pitchforks are flying at them, and their people are screaming, but they're having a blast because they're just, running through this meadow away from them, and that's just, their happy place. And it always makes me laugh. But I think it's something like that, like whatever it is. Maybe you're a fisherman, or you're into fishing, and your happy place is sitting in a boat in the middle of a lake in a very calm setting where the water is very peaceful, and your fishing pole is just dangling into the water, and you're just sitting there relaxing, and you're just waiting for a bite, but it's a very peaceful environment. Or maybe, you're into hiking, and you like to hike up a mountain, and then you get to the top of that mountain where there's an overlook, and, just sitting there and staring out at the vast distance of whatever's around, and it's something that you consider peaceful. Maybe that's what you think of, or I often sometimes is that like an oxymoron? I think sometimes I will think of when I was a kid, and there was this one time where there was a blizzard. I remember my brother and I were playing outside in the middle of this blizzard, and I think we were in the woods or on the edge of the woods, and we actually had this teepee, I think it was, that was my father had put together. That was made from just a bunch of sticks that he had found, really long sticks or branches from trees that were around, but he had stacked it all up, and he made this teepee, and it was kind of our cool little hideout. But in the middle of a blizzard, it was just insanely quiet in there, because you go and you sit in there, and there's snow packed that had been built up, because we had, maybe a foot of snow already built up around the base of it, and then the snow was falling, and it was really thick and heavy, so it packed in around the edges of this thing. And I could remember just sitting in the middle of this teepee in the middle of the woods, and you just heard the low howl of the wind, and it was just very calm and peaceful, and it felt safe, I think is probably the word. That's probably a good way to want to feel that kind of state of safety, feel safeness, that you feel good, that you feel happy with your place at the time. But it was interesting because it was in the middle of a blizzard. It was kind of cold, and I remember it was cold, and my gloves were starting to get frozen because they had been a little bit wet, and but at that point in time, sitting in that little teepee, it was a very blissful state. And I can think back of that as like a happy place. And I often think about that when I'm thinking about trying to find my happy place. But, it was, I think it was a good memory of a happy place that could be an example. Somebody maybe also who likes to camp maybe thinks that when they're camping next to a babbling brook and they're in their tent and it's quiet in the middle of the night and you can hear owls or crickets or tree toads or whatever, maybe that's your happy place. Whatever that place is, you need to get there. You got to find your way to that happy place. Now, I think some people might focus a lot of attention on how they're sitting. Like, I think one of the things, like, you sit down on your mat and you're trying to clear your mind, but you also need to maintain good posture. They say you should sit upright. You should try to, sometimes they say cross your legs. I think this is preferred as more of part of the ritual of it, so that you can get into that mind state quicker, because your body is like, okay, now I'm crossing my legs and I'm closing my eyes and I'm sitting in this position of stillness and I'm sitting up straight, and maybe that's your trigger for your body to calm down quicker because it recognizes that you're going into this meditative state. But I think it's more or less just trying to find a comfortable place to sit, finding comfort within how you're sitting, however that is, as long as you kind of maintain your posture and don't kind of slump over, because we want to think about, okay, let's say you're going to do this for 10 minutes. You don't want to have to keep adjusting or keep having to get up and switch your leg position. You want to be comfortable so that you can maintain that position for at least those 10 minutes. And then you're sitting there and you've cleared your mind by thinking of your happy place, and you're in the middle of your teepee in the middle of a blizzard, and you're closing your eyes, because they kind of say, you should close your eyes, and it's often good just to kind of block out distractions. But I often think, like, you get into this state where you're closing your eyes and you're thinking it's a dark place, or this is your cocoon that you're in, and you're not, again, distracted by the things going around you. But it's another trigger, I think, that's triggering you to have your body focus on getting into a meditative state. Now, I think your mind is going to probably start to wander at some point, and I think of the concept of the deprivation chambers, I think they're called, or I forget what they're called. They're like water tanks that you lay in, and they close them. It's completely dark, and you're laying in water, and it's something that's meant to help relax you. But some people have different effects, because they could either freak out because they're claustrophobic, or their mind is going crazy, or some people might find it's the most relaxed thing they've ever done, most relaxing thing they've ever done. But it's kind of an interesting concept, and if you think about it, you're trying to do this in your own home. You're trying to do this without water, and you're just trying to do this while you're sitting still. You're trying to get into that state of mind, which is basically a cleared state of mind. And I think it's funny, because it's not so much about clearing your head, stopping all the thoughts, but it's practicing focusing on something that is going to help you be calm. So again, it's maybe imagining that happy place, because that happy place is where you felt at peace when you think back and you can remember it. And I think it's one of those situations that, once you've trained yourself, or once you've learned how to achieve that meditative state, then I think once you've figured it out and you've unlocked the secret to it, you're going to be able to go back there easier the next time. So the next important thing to consider with this is to just keep doing it and practice and keep at it. And again, using one of those apps or a physical old school calendar where you've marked on your calendar, as long as it's something you check every day, you'll have marked on the calendar 10 minutes of meditation, so that it's a reminder to you to go and do your meditation, And I think it's probably a good idea to get to a point where you don't rely on a specific place to do it. So you're not necessarily thinking, oh, I have to do it in my living room at 7:30 in the morning, because sometimes life gets in the way of those plans. So you got to just figure, okay, well, as long as I can get my 10 minutes in. I mean, of course, I'd say your best bet at keeping to this is making a schedule of it. Doing it at 7:30 in your living room every day is probably the best way for you to get it to work out and to stick with it. But also, if you happen to be staying somewhere else for whatever reason, you're away on a work trip, and then you focus enough to sit down and meditate, then I'd say that's good as well, because I think that's an important factor, is just being consistent with it. Even if you can't go to that same place that you were in, for the past week or whatever. So I think that's kind of critical as well. And now I mentioned that, you could play some soft music or something like that. Now, I think you got to be careful. You don't want to have a radio station playing in the background that you have no control over. So obviously you want to be able to pick a playlist that's soothing and calm. I remember going to a chiropractor that also did Reiki and massages, and they had a sound system where they were playing a radio station. I think it was through Sirius or something like that, but it was like relaxing songs, and it was great, because most of the time. But there'd just be this like song that would come on that was just kind of, which one of these is not like the other type of scenario, because you're just thinking, this song doesn't seem like it should be on this station. For whatever reason, it was mixed in there, maybe as a joke, but it caused me to kind of get distracted, because it was a period of time where I was having some work done, like chiropractic work, where there was heating pads being applied that I had to sit in a room for about 20 minutes while they applied the heating pad. Like the heating pads were stuck to me, and they were actually like calming, the spasming muscles or whatever. But there was 20 minutes where I'd be laying face down and I'd have these things on and they'd be applying heat and buzzing, and I was supposed to relax so that they'd be more effective. And it was great when the music that was playing, that was the kind that I felt was relaxing, but occasionally a song would come on that would just make me think, what the heck is this? Why is this playing right now? But it's important just to be careful what you pick for music. I mean, they've got plenty of playlists out there that are just nature sounds that could work, although you got to be careful if they mix in midnight nature sounds, and it's Fisher cats howling like a woman being murdered. That's probably not an acceptable type of sound choice for meditation. But babbling brooks, even sometimes a gentle thunderstorm with the rumbling and the rain hitting a tin roof or something like that. I think those are potentially sounds. Maybe even sometimes just the sounds of a summer day with birds chirping. And again, it's like imagining you're in the middle of a meadow, and it's you're having a peaceful nap on a blanket or something, and that's another option. Although I never think of sleeping on a blanket in the middle of a meadow as being relaxing, because I'm just the type of person that would start to think that there's going to be bugs crawling around or something, and something's going to crawl up on me and bite me, or I don't know. But but other people might find that to be relaxing, so I'm not going to knock it. But again, I think it's all about keeping your state of mind, and it's always a good idea to try to do a little bit of research before you try to tackle this. So I'd say do that, go dig online. Find one of those apps that actually has instructions. I'd say that would probably be a good idea. But I think it's very much something that helps work on you. It helps build your confidence in your ability to control your body. I think that's a key thing with meditation is it's helping you feel like you can actually have control over your body. And sometimes in a world full of chaos where you feel like you can't control much, I think with meditation or exercise or reading, you can actually have an effect on the outcome, and you can control that by, picking the stuff that you want to read or choosing to sit down and meditate, so I think it's important. It's an important thing and I say the word important a lot because I do believe that there's importance in working on you. And I think it plays a big role when it comes to trying to find yourself. And, is this part of this theme of finding your identity? Because I think it's just figuring out what you want you to be, and it's a critical thing to find happiness in this world. So that was my episode about meditation and my 2 cents about meditation. And I think, if you follow some of these tips, they could be helpful for learning to meditate. So thank you again for listening to Finding Your Identity and listening to another episode. And I hope to hear that you've come back and that you haven't ended up in one of the warehouses that I had to set up for the non-listeners of the podcast, which is really starting to become a pain because now, I had to have air conditioning systems installed. I had to install a cafeteria. I've got to have medical staff because, I'm detaining these people. And, it's just so much work just to try to get people to listen to my podcast. Jeez. And I say this in jest as a subtle disclaimer. So, thanks again for listening. And until next time, this was Finding Your Identity.